head to Brussels, where the final press conference of that two-day EU-Africa summit is taking place.
And to prepare together a method which would enable us to listen to each other, to understand each other better, and to make sure that this work really worked in a new and much more effective way so that it could really achieve the goals we were aiming for. Nothing was off the cards. The roundtable discussions, which raised various issues, sometimes very difficult issues, which required ambition, leadership, but also a sense of nuance. And this was an opportunity for us to lay the groundwork for a renewed partnership focusing on a number of key principles: mutual respect, the will to set common goals, and the willingness to work together when we feel that there's real added value to this joint action. So creating a real sense of common purpose between Europe and Africa. We also took stock of a number of very specific issues on which we have been working now for a number of months. For example, in health, we had in-depth discussions about how to be pragmatic and effective when it comes to developing and producing vaccines in Africa. This was an important point we discussed. We also wanted to follow up on the commitments we made a few months ago between you, dear Emmanuel, and dear Maki, on funding investment. This was an opportunity and that special drawing rights could be a lever that we could use effectively to help fund development. Some big achievements as far as mobilizing the G7 and the G20 and this political ambition. So it's, in fact, ensuring that with a number of European member states who are committed to supporting this mobilization of special drawing rights, so we've decided to continue our efforts and to seeking an institutional way forward. What we wanted to do first and foremost is to maintain the momentum on this, then mobilizing around a number of projects in line with Africa's priorities to support development, innovation, and prosperity in climate, in digital, and in infrastructure. And another key element on which we believe there is a shared determination, we see that in the past there were strong, well-meaning intentions and in a spirit of generosity, but what we achieve in practice doesn't always live up to that. That is why we have decided to put in place a follow-up mechanism, a monitoring mechanism, of course, working on the basis of our two commissions, but with the political leadership from the African Union and the European Union, mobilizing also the private sector and civil society, the Africa-Europe Foundation in particular, to ensure that we really can take stock of what is happening, what projects are moving forward well, which ones are becoming practical, tangible realities, already those which need further stimulation. And I would say in the few hours between yesterday and today in Brussels, there is really a new spirit, a new ambitious spirit, which I think will be the key to this new successful relationship between Europe and Africa. Thank you again to all of those who have contributed to making this a real political success, and then to making sure that we will achieve tangible results for the benefit of our populations. Thank you, Mr. President. Let me give the floor to President Macky Sall of Senegal.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Now, as we come to the end of this EU-AU summit, I would just like to thank our European partners for their warm welcome and for the way in which they've organized our work. As Jean-Michel said, this was a new kind of summit because of the preparations, the consultations, which started several months ago with President Macron, the two commissions of the African Union and the European Union, and this enabled us to work on this upstream and identify our common priorities and come up with commitments together. We now have a historic opportunity to look at the basis of a new kind of partnership, a renewed partnership we want to build together. And there are two aspects which I think we need to take into account in order to achieve this. First of all, we have to mobilize the means needed to meet our commitments, in particular on the question of the reallocation of the special drawing rights. A great deal of work was done yesterday and also today with President Macron. We have worked together with all partners in order to put this commitment into practice. Production of vaccines in Africa. This morning, we were witnesses to an exceptional ceremony where the EU said it was prepared to transfer technology for the messenger RNA technology. 5 or 6 African countries were selected as hubs: South Africa, Kenya, Egypt, Tunisia, Senegal, and Nigeria. So initially they will be benefiting from this technology and training and all the regulatory environment that's needed for this kind of process. The only issue we have to look at is intellectual property rights. And here we have drawn certain conclusions which are encouraging, and we hope that over the next few months, by this spring, we should be able to come up with a dynamic compromise which will drive this topic forward. In particular, we welcome the European Initiative for Financing Infrastructures, Global Gateway. This is 550 billion to be mobilized with the facility, and this will constitute significant progress and build bridges between our two continents. We have to create a new working environment which is better adjusted to the political will we want to see. We need, I think, to give a boost to our dynamics. I was saying yesterday that we needed a new relationship software based on a shared vision of partnership rather than aid. And in this way, we can move towards shared prosperity and growth. Europe and Africa have resources which the other party needs, and it makes sense to pool our resources and our means and to benefit from this mutually. And in that way, our partnership will be a real give and take situation. Once again, it's important to ensure that young people and women remain at the very heart of our agenda. I would like to call on mobilization here to support the Rays of Hope initiative from the International Atomic Agency for combating cancer, in particular cancer in women. You know, in half of African countries, we don't have any radiotherapy facilities. And the idea of this project is to ensure that all countries have radiotherapy to combat cancer. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je passe la parole.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me give the floor to the President of France. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam President, Presidents, ladies and gentlemen, President Michel, and President Macky Sall has just now said in very clear terms the spirit and the method and the fundamentally new approach that we want to follow in terms of our relations between the European Union and the African Union and our two continents. We have some very political goals. We have some very specific, tangible tangible projects for our partnership. I would just like to go back over a few points. One is of key importance. One is the health challenge. Thank you to President Macky Sall for having stressed the key role of the health agenda above and beyond COVID-19. In this partnership, we need to prepare already for the future cooperation on other pandemics and other viruses, but also on issues of public health. You mentioned cancer, and that is an area where we want to continue focusing our efforts. You have said there will be 450 million doses to Africa, which will be added to the COVAX by summer of this year. We have a new structured approach to administering as well these vaccines. This summit also wants to focus on a number of points. One is to put on a sound basis the principle of hubs on Africa for 6 hubs, as the President has just mentioned, in terms of vaccines. We have an initiative with EIB and Germany in particular to define a package of investments for the benefit of via the African Development Bank, so that Africa will be able to act in a very fully sovereign way. So we're talking about health and vaccine sovereignty, and with a view in the run-up to spring, we want to finalize this between the two commissions to find a framework for the two copyright issues, and this in conjunction with the WTO and the WHO. So we have clear joint commitments on this. On growth, both presidents have gone into this already. We face a huge challenge on Africa, which is coming out of the COVID pandemic at a time when there are huge numbers of young people arriving on the labour market. This is a great opportunity, but also a huge challenge. And at the same time, we have the challenge of the environmental transition. As regards funding African economies, work still needs to continue on this. In terms of our commitment to reallocate 20% of special drawing rights so that we can achieve this goal of 100 billion for the poorest countries and 100 billion for Africa. In this respect, different techniques may be used. Some will reallocate special drawing rights. Others will have lending mechanisms, but we will reach this goal. Then we have worked on how to consolidate, how to provide budgetary support for African economies, but also in conjunction with regional banks to create funding mechanisms adapted to each sector. In terms of sustainable infrastructure, the European Union is very committed. The President has pointed these out, and I think we will come back to that. The European Union is determined to be Africa's partner, closest partner for funding its infrastructure. We can do that in terms of climate transition, in industrial terms, in terms of quality and quantity of financing, and the sustainability of financing. And a number of these projects have been already identified. We have already a list of strategic corridors agreed with the African Union, with a list of projects which will come on top of our declarations today. We've also announced an approach whereby the European Union will be able to accompany Africa in its energy transition along the same lines as we have achieved with South Africa a few months ago, with Senegal, Egypt, Cote d'Ivoire, by the COP27 to be able to put in place a number of other joint models of funding. And in terms of the investment shock for African economies, there are 3 other points I wanted to make. Firstly, we have to accompany Africa in terms of support, in terms of its agricultural model. I'm talking here about the Great Green Wall, which is an African initiative activated since 2021. We've mobilized almost $13 billion of international investment. And these synergies in terms of shared sovereignty between Africa and Europe 1 year ago or so put in place a protein sovereignty strategy, and Africa has done the same now with the Green Wall. We still have a lot of work to do in this respect. Secondly, supporting African entrepreneurship. We did that 2 days ago. And thirdly, in terms of infrastructure and economic development, I would stress the importance of the European constellation put in place by the European Commission 3 days ago, which I supported in Toulouse in the middle of the week, which is a Euro-African constellation. So for the first time, Europe will have a constellation, which we haven't had up to now, but it is especially a north-south one, which will enable us to cover a lower orbit, not just Europe, but also the whole African continent. That will be a huge role in terms of economic development. Then mobility and migration going very quickly. Rwanda, Nigeria and Benin have made proposals in terms of centres for African training. We have proposed to fund training centres in Africa, which can help train young people for jobs where there is a clear gap on the market, improving to our cooperation in combating traffickers and illegal paths for migration, and regulating the issue of returns to the countries of origin for all those whose applications have been rejected in Europe. And then the final point, combating terrorism and maintaining peace and stability in Africa. It's not just an issue in the Sahel, as I mentioned yesterday, but also in the Horn of Africa and in Central Africa are also affected. It affects much of the continent. I would just say in this respect that we have consolidated a partnership-based approach where, on the basis of the requests from African countries, Europe has shown its willingness and ability to fund operations, to fund equipment and accompanying measures. In terms of what has been achieved by Rwanda in Mozambique, along the same lines, an operation which we want to accompany, and we want to accompany it all the way, which it shows that African countries are capable of organizing their own resources. In the case of regional grouping SADC, where in this case, where Europe would be an accompanying partner. And then, secondly, before and during this summit, we have been working on completing work in terms of maritime security. This is another key example of our exemplary cooperation. We support the request from the African countries with respect to the UN to have a new mechanism which could be funded by the UN, which would enable African militaries to stabilize the situation, to combat terrorism, or to engage in peacekeeping. So these are some of the key points I wanted to highlight. I would just like to thank in particular all the delegations, and in particular the presidents who are on either side of me. They've made a huge contribution to this summit. We face a huge challenge, and I think we will meet this challenge because we're fully mobilized.
Madam President, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We had a summit indeed that was, I would say, packed and productive. It was a very good summit. And we could see that as Africa sets sail on the future, the European Union wants to be Africa's partner of choice. This is basically the summary of this summit. And for this, indeed, we need a stronger partnership between us. So what does it mean concretely? It means remaining an economic partner you can trust. And the European Union is the first trading partner and the first investor in Africa. And therefore, it is no coincidence that the first regional plan under our big investment strategy, Global Gateway, is the Africa-Europe plan with more than 150 billion euros of investment. And indeed, we have together developed very clear objectives we want to invest in. There is the big topic of the green transition, of course, the renewables. I had several talks with partners who immediately want to engage on the main topic of green hydrogen. There is transport networks. The connectivity within the continent is crucial for the free trade area to function. Digital connections, the satellite idea has been mentioned, but also sustainable agriculture, healthcare, and most importantly, education. Now, what is important is these priorities, we defined them together, and now we want to work together on them. We want to deliver. And the first series of major projects have already been presented today. The second point that is important for me is to emphasize that a stronger partnership means stepping up our joint fight against climate change. We want to see green partnerships like the ones we have with South Africa or Morocco flourish across the continent. Because climate action is the challenge of our generation, has been a big topic on this summit. And yet, there lie also great opportunities for the next generation if we act now. Africa is rich in renewable power. If you look at hydropower, solar power, wind power. And Africa is rich in nature, with 1/4 of the world's biodiversity, 1/4. So to end climate change, the world needs Africa. Yet the transition to clean energy will be a process for economies that rely heavily on coal, be it in Africa or be it in Europe. But we are both determined. And I'm very much looking forward to Egypt hosting COP27 this year. And finally, from the health of our planet to the health of our people, Europe is Africa's #1 partner in the fight against COVID-19. And we will do even more. We are on the right track to reach our goal to share at least 450 million vaccine doses by this summer. And indeed, together we are building up mRNA manufacturing capacity across Africa. I will not go in detail because we have discussed that in the press conference this morning. But important is we had a very good, intense, constructive discussion on the question of TRIPS waiver and compulsory licensing. We share the same goal. We have different ways to reach that goal. There must be a bridge between those two ways. And therefore, we have decided that the two commissions, the African Commission and the European Commission, will work together. We will meet college-to-college meeting here in Brussels in spring. And at that time, the latest, we have to deliver a solution. This will be accompanied by WTO, Ngozi. And therefore, I like it always when a task is clear and defined. The task is set for the two commissions. The frame is clear. The goal is clear. We have to deliver. So Europe wants to remain Africa's first partner, a loyal partner, and we are moving right now from words to action. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. And may I invite President Moussa Faki to take the floor.
Merci. Il n'est toujours pas aisé de parler le dernier.
Thank you. Well, it's not easy to be last because you end up repeating what everyone else has already said. All I would say is that we had an innovative meeting, not just the content but the form as well. We had very good preparation together, and from a methodological point of view that went very well. Contrary to our practices where we have 55 African states and 25 European countries all making speeches, 27 European countries all making speeches, but we decided it would be a better idea to have round tables so we could actually speak to one another very frankly. And I'm going to sum up our concerns here in two main categories. Financing peace doesn't mean just sending troops or funding for weapons. It means consolidating governance, justice, administration, and financing development in all aspects, education, health, infrastructures. Just over 2 years ago, we launched our continental free trade area, 30 million square meters, 1.3 billion inhabitants. Connecting countries, connecting regions is a problem. And if you want to have trade, well, you need to have infrastructure. So that is one of our priorities in Africa. Energy is one of our priorities. These are key issues.
60
In Africa, more than 60% of our population is made up of young people. They need to be trained. We need vocational training. These young people, even those who have degrees, can't find a job. And unfortunately, we've seen that violent extremism in the Sahel, Mozambique, and terrorism these activities are at the mercy of terrorists. Now, the outset, the ideology and funding came from elsewhere. They recruit there in Africa now. So it's very serious. And that is why, when we were talking to our European friends, I think we had to explain that we need to assess everything that's going on in Africa. The EU has provided 2.5 billion euros of funding for peace operations on the African continent. And that is quite remarkable. The UN has had peacekeepers here for more than 60 years. I'm not going to mention the countries, but some of these missions have been there for 60 years. And we've got to look at the whole issue of peacekeeping operations in Africa. What we really need now is to look at things clearly and take action where relevant. We discussed this. African countries are ready to mobilize people. We've done so. We have a multinational force in the Chad Basin, G5 Sahel, the 5 Sahel states, AMISOM, SADC also provided people for Mozambique. We can do that. We have people. In our African architecture, we can do that. We have people. But I think we have to change the way we look at things. And I think that we are currently looking at this together. And we need to proceed differently from in the past. Our friends and partners can help us strengthen and build capacity of the African forces. I don't think we should have a situation where we have French, German or Danish troops dying in Africa. We need technology, we need expertise, we need equipment, we need financing in order to tackle this terrible threat to our peace and stability. So these are the basic issues we looked at. We do have perhaps some differences of opinion, but I think we said that the two commissions will look at certain issues. The COVID-19 pandemic has really revealed certain weaknesses and fragility we have in our continent. We have 1.3 billion people, and we cannot sit around waiting until we can import vaccines. This is something we looked at. We have an African agency which has just been set up. We have Africa CDC, which works on pandemics. So we do have the instruments, and with the support of our friends, progressively these issues should be managed at a local level. In short, I would say that I've been present at 4 summits, African Union, EU summits, and I think this time is the only summit where we've really had a different kind of discussion, and we've had a frank discussion.
Un grand merci, Monsieur le Président.